Welcome to Confessions with Cynthia, where we explore careers, relationships, and lifestyles of Homo sapiens.
Hello, I'm your host Cynthia, and today's special guest has taught English in Japan, climbed Mount Fuji, and has been dragon boating since 2014. Please welcome Kellie.
Hi everybody, I'm Kellie and I'm an ex-teacher.
Thanks for joining us, Kellie. Can you tell us a bit about yourself and how you got into the industry?
Okay, so a little bit about myself. I am 52 now, was born in Canberra and grew up in Canberra, spent most of my life here. And in terms of getting into the industry, teaching industry, I had always wanted to be a teacher from a young age, and I basically finished Year 12 and enrolled straight away in a Bachelor of Education at the University of Canberra and did my 4 years. Yeah, the rest is history.
So what event kind of solidified your choice and career as a teacher? Maybe it was someone else that you looked up to at a young age or a family friend?
Yeah, I think, I knew I wanted to be a teacher since I was about 8. And I think the main reason, I love kids, and I'd always wanted my mum to have, I've got one younger sister, but I wanted her to have more babies, right, because I love babies. But I decided I wanted to be a teacher at the age of 8. And I think it was because I absolutely loved primary school and I adored my teachers, every one of them at primary school. And I wanted to be like them. I think that was what it came down to, was, I wanted to be like those teachers. And I can't pick one teacher in particular, although I could possibly come back to the teacher I had when I was in Year 3, who I remember used to draw these every week, every Monday morning we'd go in and it was chalkboards back then, and she would have drawn the most amazing picture on the board. And I just loved her, and she was gorgeous, and she had the most divine suede shoes that I used to play with her shoes while she was reading, which is sort of a bit weird, but anyway. Yeah, I wanted to be like her. Yeah.
Oh, that's so sweet. And with growing up with such great teachers around you, how did you choose your major in university? What was it?
Oh, so my major, obviously was the Bachelor of Education in primary teaching, but my major was Japanese. And the reason I actually started learning, I didn't start learning Japanese until I was in Year 12. And the reason was when I was in high school, it might have been Year 9 or 10, we had this pen pal program with a school in Japan. And I had this pen pal that I just kept writing letters to and that sort of thing. And in my misguided thoughts about how quickly I could learn Japanese, I decided that I would learn Japanese in Year 12 and would then be able to communicate with her in Japanese as well as English. Of course, it doesn't work that way. But I loved Japanese. I loved my Japanese teacher in Year 12. And I just decided that Japanese would be a really good major to do. So that's how I got into that.
Oh, that's so amazing. And then when you were studying Japanese as well as teaching for primary school, how did you find your first year working as a professional after graduation?
Oh, that was the first year. I'd say it was fabulous and it was awful in equal measures. Awful because nothing that you do, like at the University of Canberra, at the time that university had a wonderful practicum program, and we went out on a lot of practical experience, but all of that practical experience, nothing prepares you as a first-year teacher to actually be in front of your own class and be totally in control. And so that was a massive, massive learning curve. But it was fabulous because I was in an absolutely amazing school with a lot of experienced teachers. I actually moved to Newcastle from Canberra and taught at Charlestown School, and just surrounded by the most wonderful, supportive teachers, great kids, great environment. And I did teach Japanese there as well. So I was lucky in that sense that it was easy to find a job because I had Japanese and they needed language teachers at that time.
So it sounded like you had a very positive experience coming out of graduation, being guided by well-seasoned teachers. And you did mention that you actually taught in Japan for a little while. Can you tell us a bit about teaching in Japan and teaching English there?
Yeah. So I had 2 years in Newcastle, and then I moved back to Canberra, and I had 2 years in Canberra, and then I wanted to go on the Japanese government JET program for quite some time. So JET, J-E-T, is the Japanese English teaching program. I'm pretty sure it still exists, but I'm not sure if it's still called that. But basically what they do is that they will take anybody who's a native English speaker of a certain age, as long as you have a degree in something, it doesn't have to be in education, and you go over to Japan for anywhere between 1 and 3 years and work as an English assistant teacher in the schools there. So I did that in 1998 and stayed for 2 years. And the first year I taught in 3 senior high schools, which is a totally different experience. So senior high school over there is equivalent to our year 10, 11 and 12, I think. And, so I taught in 2 or 3 senior high schools. And then in the second year, I managed to get a shift to primary school, and I taught in 2 primary schools. So 3 days a week and 2 days a week. And that was amazing, that whole experience, sort of being, just working with primary school children and, being able to play games with them in English and that sort of thing. So
wonderful.
That was a wonderful 2 years. It was really, really good to do that.
I'm so glad that you had that experience, and surely being a teacher, there are some funny stories that have happened. Please tell us your experiences and some funny moments that you had with the children.
No real standout funny story per se that I can say, but it's a lot of it's just those little moments of the innocence of children, even year 6 children, even though they think they're really grown up, and their absolute honesty just makes for some really, really funny, I don't know if funny, but poignant moments that are quite memorable. And I always think that when you can laugh with your class, no matter what grade they are, then you know that you've actually got that mutual respect and that sort of thing. And honestly, if you give kids a little bit of leeway, kids can be really, really funny. And just the little quirky things that they say. Yeah, I do remember my one year 2 class that I had. It was my second year of teaching, so I was still in Newcastle, and they were the most gorgeous group of children. Really, very touchy-feely and that sort of thing, but just really sweet kids, very intelligent kids. And I had one of the girls was a bit upset, and she came and she sat on my lap when we were sitting in a circle doing some activity, and she was having a little bit of a cry and that sort of thing, and giving me a cuddle, and then all of a sudden she actually farted on my knee. And I was like, I laughed, and the other kids had heard it and they laughed, and that made her cry harder. And I was like, oh my God. And then all of the kids are saying, oh no, it's fine. No, that wasn't, no, that was that was the teacher, and or it was her chair, or it was the monster under the table, and that sort of thing. And it's just the it was, oh my God, it stunk too. But it was just the kids all coming together when they saw that one of their classmates was upset, and they felt bad because they'd laughed at her. And it was just a really, really sweet in one way and not so sweet in another moment. But yeah, it is those little moments and little things that kids say.
Yeah, of course. And obviously you've seen all the different sides of teaching, and I'm sure that you've also experienced difficult moments amongst the beautiful ones that you've just mentioned. What were some of the difficult moments that helped you grow during your time as a teacher?
I think really if you want to grow professionally and personally as a teacher, that there are challenges that you face every week. I think any teacher that says that they sail through things perfectly is not telling the truth. But challenges come, with different classes and with different kids. And I think probably for me early on, one of the biggest challenges that I had was actually really understanding where kids were coming from and where their parents were coming from, because I didn't have kids myself. And I do recall I think it was one of the teachers or one of the parents, I overheard them saying, "Oh, no, that's fine. She doesn't have kids, so she doesn't really understand." And I just went, "Oh, great," But then afterwards I thought about it. It's like, no, actually I don't. So I think when I became a parent, my teaching changed as well, and the way I talk to kids and the way I talk to parents changed. So, yeah, but just, kids that have got difficult family lives or have just had a bad morning, or parents who've had a bad morning and that sort of thing. Every little thing that you deal with, I think, helps you grow and helps your confidence grow as a teacher. But I think it's also important to know that you don't, no two situations are ever the same.
Yeah, absolutely. And from your understanding of children and parents over the years, what is something that you would tell parents who were worried about their child starting off school?
It would depend exactly what they're worried about as well. If they're just worried about their child making friends, I think that probably the worst thing that you could say is, don't worry about it, it'll be fine. Because I think you need to acknowledge the parents are worried, whether or not you think it's a worthwhile worry or not, is to acknowledge that they're worried. And then ask them to tell you about it, or make sure, just say, look, I will let you know at the end of the day how things went, or I'll send you an email, or I'll give you a call during the day. Like if there's been times where parents have been quite concerned that, their child's been a bit upset in the morning about something. And so just that quick phone call or a quick email or text message at recess just to say, hey, so-and-so's doing okay, is really quite helpful.
You're listening to Confessions with Cynthia, with Kellie.
For parents whose children have any sort of special needs or anything like that, I do get a few. I used to get a few parents that would come to me and say, "Oh, my son, daughter, or whatever, I'm worried about how they're going to go in the mainstream classroom and that sort of thing." Because I was quite open that my son has Asperger's, so parents would sometimes come to me and talk to me about that. And my advice to those parents, and actually to any parents, is to always remember that sometimes you are the only advocate for your child. And you have a concern, if you think that something is wrong, if you think that your child's needs are not being met, you have to go with your gut. And as hard as it is, you have to keep pushing until you make sure that the teachers at the school understand. Because I found I had to do that quite a lot with my son. And it's hard. It's hard, but at the end of the day, it's your child and you're an advocate for your child. So, and I would tell parents that as well.
Absolutely, I totally agree. It's more like that, you say, touching base and keeping contact with the teacher if you're concerned, so raising your voice and just say, I'm a little bit concerned, or can we set some time aside to talk to you, just so then you can have a better understanding of how your child is going. And that is really important, like you said. So with that, would you say, is there any tips or tricks that you would give to parents or children who felt anxious about learning or needed that extra encouragement at school?
Yeah, I would just say let's just do one step at a time. Don't try, particularly with the kids. We always come across a lot of children who compare themselves in a negative way to other children. As I've had children say to me, I can't write, I'm dumb, I'm no good at this and that sort of thing. And what it often comes down to, without trying to oversimplify it, is that they're looking at the broad picture and the end product rather than the little steps that they need to get there. And it's the same with parents. It's like parents will sometimes come in and say, oh, all the other children are reading out of the green box and my child's still reading out of the red box and that sort of thing. And I think it's that reassurance that every child learns at a different pace, and let's celebrate, let's find the little achievements and really make a big deal out of them.
Oh, that's really well said.
Yeah, the most important thing. It took a while to get to that, but anyway.
No, but you're right. It's about celebrating those small achievements and milestones and encouraging the children, saying that you're doing great. And I feel that the way that you speak to a child is really impactful in a really great way, and it gives them that confidence. So I love that you encouraged the children to do that. So with all those experiences and years of teaching under your belt, tell me when you felt that you hit a roadblock in your career as a teacher.
So I used to hit this little roadblock. I used to call it the 5-year itch, where I'd be doing something for, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And I'm like, I can't do this anymore. I need a change. I need a challenge. So that could be something as simple as, I've now been on the same grade level for 3 years, or I've been teaching with the same group of people for 4 years or whatever. And I used to feel like I was getting stale and that sort of thing. I don't know whether I say to people sometimes, look, I get bored really easily and I need a change. And so, there was the one school I actually spent 5 years teaching in senior primary in year 5, 6. And I changed schools after the 5th year. And I said to my principal at the new school I was at, they said, look, what grade level do you want? Do you want year 5, 6? I'm like, no, I do not. I cannot teach year 5, 6 again for at least another 4 or 5 years. And it was true because I had spent so long, I felt like I was getting stale. So I used to have those little roadblocks every, 4 or 5 years or so. But the actual roadblock that I hit that really, really, it was the turning point for me was my son got diagnosed. He was diagnosed with Asperger's at the age of 4, so he was in preschool. And when he was in kindergarten, he was at the same school as me, and his kindergarten teacher walked into the staff room and in front of everybody said to me, your son's a real turd burger. And I just
awful.
went, oh no, and I just went, I can't even remember what I said. I don't think I said anything as well. I'm just like, where does that expression even come from? But that was the point. I walked down the corridor back to my class, and as I walked down, I was so cranky. And the kids, when I got there, they said to me, oh my God, what is wrong with you? And I'm like, don't worry about it. It was just staff room politics and that sort of thing. But that, for me, that was the point where I started to think I'm in an industry where children with special needs are not given the time or the respect that they deserve from teachers, because teachers don't know what to do, and it's not okay to do that. And then that was when I started noticing conversations in staff rooms and that sort of thing pertaining to children who were difficult or from, special needs backgrounds or something. And I think it was that little seed that was planted at that time that sort of grew and blossomed over the next few years before I finally just went, no, I can't do this anymore.
So that negative experience kind of pushed you as the ultimatum to kind of leave the industry. And so what year was it that you decided to actually leave?
I changed schools the following year, and then I went part-time for a little bit because I think it was 2014 I decided to go, or 15 that I decided to go part-time after teaching full-time for all of those years. As I went part-time, because I knew I wanted to do something different, but I didn't know what, and I just needed the space to think about that. And that was when I started sort of looking into doing editing and writing, and which is what I do now. But it took a number of years for me to actually get that courage to cut that final thread, because I was a permanent staff member from the first day I started teaching, actually, and permanency at that point was really, really hard to get, and I'm not a risk taker at all. And I was petrified that if I left this solid career where I was always guaranteed work, that I would somehow fail, and then I'd have to go and work in a supermarket or somewhere. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but you know what I mean. So I just, it took me a long time to leave. But I think because that seed had been sown, I started to find myself getting more and more irritated with things that I heard teachers say, and the way teaching was moving to team teaching, which is not really team teaching. And it was just all the little things used to, would annoy me. And I started removing myself from the staff room and that sort of thing. And I would get up in the morning. At one point I was only teaching on Thursdays, and I would get up on Monday morning and think, I've got to go to school on Thursday, 3 or 4 days ahead. And I knew that once I started thinking like that I needed to make that move. And eventually when I got into the school and was with the kids, it was great. It was fantastic, but getting there was quite tricky. And I ended up having a conversation with my principal at the end of halfway through the year. And this was in when did COVID start? 2020, so it must have been in 2020. And in halfway through the year, and he said, what are you going to do next year? Because I was only teaching 1 day a week and that sort of thing. And I said to him, look, I actually think I might resign. And he's like, bravo to you. That's a good move. He said, if you move schools, it's really hard to get 1 day a week. And I'm like, yeah, I know, but I actually think I need to do this. And he said to me, when do you want to resign? And I opened my mouth and I said, now.
Oh.
And he said, and it just happened. And I put when I said now, I went, oh, was that me that said, did I just say that?
Oh, you said it.
Yeah. And he looked very surprised because I think he wasn't expecting that, and I wasn't expecting it. And he said, can you give me 4 weeks notice? So I said, yes. Okay, let's do this. And I walked out of his office and I went, oh my God, what have I done? But it turned out to be the absolute best thing for my business. So that was halfway through the year, 2020 or 21. Actually, it's all a blur now. I think the 3 years of COVID for everybody was a bit of a blur. So March last year, my casual teaching card ran out and I didn't renew it. So that was the final thing. I'd logged myself off. I wasn't going to be going back casual teaching. I think I did 1 day of casual teaching back at my old school and hated it. And I just went, yeah, no, I'm out. And I will just, if things fail with my business, things fail, and that's fine. I can bounce back from this. So, yeah. But I also think if I'd left earlier, like I'd wanted to, it wasn't the right time either. Yeah. So that now and that conversation with my principal, as shocked as we both were, it was meant to be, I think.
You're listening to Confessions with Cynthia, with Kellie. So definitely, I am so sorry to hear about that experience with hearing those negative conversations that teachers had about special needs children. I know that would have been very difficult to hear, and also hearing that you felt a lot of exhaustion and also wanting to kind of flourish in another way, especially when you went up front and just said, hey, I'm resigning in 2021, and then all of a sudden everything changes for you. And like you said, like your teaching licensing, I think it was, you said teacher's card expired last year in 2022, is that correct?
Yep.
And then at that time you were looking at starting your own business, which is editing.
Yep.
And I feel that it's such a big step, and like you said, it's very very difficult to jump away from what you knew for such a long time to doing something else that you really wanted to do, and that is really brave, and I commend you for that. And
thank you. I'd actually started the business in 2019. So I'd sort of been doing both, and I'd been reducing my hours at school and increasing my hours on the business. So I was finding that just that one day was like, ugh.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was the right time.
Yeah, absolutely. And you had to take those steps to do that. And it seemed like you made the right decision. So with all of this and with you leaving the school, what were some of the positive aspects that still resonate with you from your experience from your previous career as a teacher?
Yeah, so there are a lot of positives. So if we'd done this interview at any time in the second half of 2021, I wouldn't have been able to think of any positives. But over time, it's like, there are more positive aspects than the negative ones. So it is the relationship with the children that you build. And also too, like every teacher has this, at least one moment in their career that you just go, oh my God, I made a difference, which is why we all do it, right? So I'd taught a girl she was in year 4 at one of the second school I was at, and it was when she was in my class, but I also taught Japanese across the school, and I used to love teaching art at the time. So we used to do the most amazing art lessons and that sort of thing. But anyway, I ran into her years later. So when I taught her, she was 10. And then I ran into her again when she was 19 or 20 at an art studio where my daughter was doing lessons. And she came up to me and she was like, you probably don't remember me, but I'm this person. And she had an art exhibition on, and it was Japanese art. And I'm just like, oh, my God, this is amazing. And she said, yes. She said, you were my favourite teacher in primary school. I loved Japanese and I loved doing art with you, and that's why I'm doing what I do now. So she'd spent time in Japan studying under some of the traditional Japanese artists there, and then had this exhibition. And it was just like, oh, my God, 26 years of teaching, and all you need is that one student who you've made a difference with in some way. And I will always remember that. This is the most beautiful art, and I actually wish I'd bought a piece, but I didn't. But, all of those little things, the relationships that you have with some staff and some principals and parents as well. Also, I sort of said, that I did hear lots of really negative conversations in the staff room, and that makes it sound like all teachers, don't respect children with special needs, which is not true. It's always the worst ones that always stand out, I think. But my son has had some of the most amazing teachers throughout his primary and high school years, and they're the teachers that, we need more of, basically, and they're the ones that renew your faith in the education system and think, it's going to be okay, and hopefully the good will override the bad as well. So yeah, lots of lovely little moments, really.
That's so good.
I can now think back on those and go, yeah, you know what, 26 years, that wasn't a waste of my time. I did enjoy it.
No, that's so good to hear. I'm so glad that I'm so glad to hear that you had some beautiful memories and that people remember you and what you did for them. And it sounds like you had a very good and positive impact on those students. And it showed with that beautiful young woman that said, hey, you're amazing,
Yeah, and that was lovely. The other little memory I have, when I got married in 1998, I think it was, I was teaching that same year 4 class, actually, that this girl came out of. And I'd always said, like, the girls in the class in year 4, they're just like, when are you going to get married? And blah, 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 blah. And they're always really interested. And I remember saying to a small group of them once, or to one girl in particular, look, when I get married, you can be my bridesmaid.
Oh.
Or my flower girl, I think it was, because I didn't have bridesmaids. It was my flower girl. Anyway, there was one of those off-the-cuff things, because I thought, no, I'm never going to get married. And then we did get married in that same year, because for my now husband to come to Japan with me, he had to be on a spouse visa. And when I told them, her eyes, this child's eyes lit up. And she's like, I get to be your flower girl.
Oh.
And so I honoured that. And she made the most gorgeous flower girl. And
Kellie.
all of the girls in that class and their parents, they came to the wedding ceremony. And I had one of the parents, she made the bouquets, and another parent did something else. And it was just that community where, you know, the kids love you, you love the kids, you get on with the parents. And, I'd actually forgotten about that until just now. So that's good. Thank you for reminding me.
That's okay. You're so very welcome. And that is such a beautiful moment and beautiful career that you had with such gorgeous children.
Oh.
And now more than ever, I understand, and we've seen through COVID that we need teachers more than ever now. So
wow. Yeah.
And what would you say to encourage people to support teachers?
To encourage people to support teachers is, I think during COVID, when we went into that remote learning or the home learning or homeschooling, for want of a better word, I think that changed parents' respect for teachers and what teachers do a little bit. I know a lot of parents said to me, oh my God, I actually finally understand now, and all those poor teachers, you know, I can't even deal with teaching my child. How do they teach 30 in a class? And I think now more than ever, it is so tough for teachers now. I don't know about the other states, but in Canberra, huge teacher shortage. Teachers are missing their release time. They're having to teach 2 or 3 classes on their own because they can't get relief staff. Coming into the winter term, it's going to be a nightmare because of flu and cold and more COVID and that sort of thing. So in terms of supporting teachers, I think just, you know, saying thank you or writing, you know, a little card or buying a bunch of flowers or just, you know, acknowledging, thank you for teaching my child goes a long, long way. Because, like, we don't expect it, but when a parent's gone, you know, you've just looked after my child, thank you so much, and that sort of thing, just the tiny little tokens of appreciation are what teachers need to keep going, I think.
Definitely. And it's such a huge responsibility, and we are so very grateful for teachers like yourself that help young kids flourish. And for this, what piece of advice would you give to people looking to join the industry today? Okay,
so I can actually tell you what I do say to the first year education students that I've actually, after saying I didn't want to teach anymore, I actually now teach at the University of Canberra 1 day a week. Yeah, first year education students. So what I say to them is go in and stand your ground, and be true to the children as well. So I was always one of those teachers who I often didn't toe the line in terms of, you must teach this way and you must teach this content and don't worry about that. I like to teach the children, and I would cover the curriculum, but teaching the child is so important. So if I didn't believe that some particular teaching strategy was going to work for my class, then I didn't do it. I taught the way that my students needed to be taught, and I could justify that. So, you know, for better or worse, that's what I say to the pre-service teachers now, is go in there and be yourself and be honest with your students. If you don't know something, tell them. Don't feel you have to know everything. Is so important, is just to, you know, be yourself, because if you're not yourself, you burn out so quick.
Definitely, and that's very well said. Well, thank you again for joining us today and sharing part of your story with us. If you'd like to find out more about Kellie, you can follow her here on her website at justrightwords.com.au. The link will be available in the description. We look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Bye!